Welcome back, Rosebuds. To our return listeners, if ever you want to skip the intro and dive right into the stories, just use the handy bookmarks in the description below. For those of you who are new here, welcome. We tell you a handful of stories that are true, with one imposter story that is complete fiction. Try and guess which of the following stories are true and which one is completely made up. Today we're telling stories about haunted houses, so make sure to listen all the way to the end, where I will reveal which fictitious story was written by me. So sit back, dim the lights, and settle in for 5 terrifying haunted house tales to tell in the dark. Story number 1, The Clicking Sound. The only unexplained phenomenon I've ever had was when we were moving out of a house in South Oklahoma. It was built in 1898. There was a wall with no windows, which would occasionally emit a sort of click sound randomly throughout the day. Sometimes soft, sometimes loud and slightly alarming. We shrugged it off as some sort of settling sound coming from the old woodwork. Come moving day, as my wife and I were loading boxes, we noticed our dog was frozen, just staring at this wall, making no clicks at this time. My wife and I just wrote it off as our dog being his usual dorky self. But then the dog started to growl, a low, steady growl, unlike anything we had ever heard him do before. He rarely growled at all. He was getting so upset the hackles on his back began to rise. Eventually, the growl turned into a bark, and his body language clearly indicated fear of something concerning that wall. He continued on like this, making panicked movements for about 5 minutes. We tried to settle him down, but he continued on frantically as if to say, "WTF, aren't you seeing this?" As this was going on, my wife and I were checking out everything about the wall that we could, inside and out, and we could see nothing. He didn't completely settle down until about 10 minutes later, at which time the wall made one of its familiar, loud popping sounds, sending the dog running for the bedroom. After this episode, he avoided that part of the house entirely until we moved out. Story number 2, My Sister's House. This experience totally gave me chills because my sister's house is haunted. One night while babysitting for her, I was walking around the house, shutting down lights and locking the front door. I dipped quickly into the open living room with one of the dogs walking with me. As I left the room, I heard a distinctive child's voice say,
"Who's that?"
The dog turned around, sniffed, stepped back into the room, and barked. Freaked me out. The next night, when I was in a dead-ass sleep, someone harshly yelled in my ear,
"Wake up!"
I have never heard disembodied voices in my life, only at my sister's house. Needless to say, I haven't been back since. Story number 3. Is it our home or me? For context, I am prone to night terrors, so I can understand why my husband feels like maybe this isn't an external but internal issue with brain wiring and all that. We recently moved to a new house. In our old home, I was not prone to sleep paralysis. The odd thing is, I never had sleep paralysis until we inherited this old mirror from my husband's aunt. I never really liked the mirror, but my husband felt like it was a family heirloom and that we needed to keep it. Because we lived in a small house at the time, we weren't able to keep it anywhere other than our bedroom. If we kept it in the garage or the basement, he was afraid it would suffer structural damage, and so the bedroom it was. I would often cover the mirror when I slept at night because of the creepy vibe it gave me. Maybe it was psychosomatic, but when the mirror was uncovered, I would have terrible sleep paralysis of a dark entity sitting on my chest and squeezing so tightly I felt like I was hyperventilating. I would will myself to wake up and sit up abruptly, gasping for air, but there would be nothing in the room. There were some nights that I would cover the mirror and I would wake up from these night terrors and the mirror covering would be on the floor. There was an air conditioner vent above, and I always assumed that maybe the draft from above slowly moved the covering off the mirror. I always felt very uncertain about this, and now more than ever since we've moved into the new house, different occurrences are now happening. It was a 2-year time span between when we acquired the mirror and when we moved. The new house was considerably bigger and had a temperature-controlled attic storage space. My husband and I argued about it, but I was insistent that the mirror was going in the attic and would no longer be in our room. It's been several months, and I haven't had a night terror with sleep paralysis at all, not even once. Mind you, I would get them at least 2 to 3 times a week in the old house. Things seem to be going really well, except lately, when I'm home alone and I'm watching TV, my dog will stand in the hallway and just start growling at nothing. It's very unnerving. The other day, the smoke alarm in the kitchen went off, and I wasn't sure why. I keep my cast iron frying pan on the stove. I do keep it seasoned with oil. One of the burners on the stove had gotten turned on and the oil had heated up in the pan and was beginning to burn, which caused the smoke alarm to go off. The rational explanation would be that I forgot to turn the burner off, except I ate a pot pie in the microwave that night and didn't use the stove at all. The final straw was when I kept hearing something upstairs, as if someone was actually in my attic. I was terrified, but I took a flashlight and went up there and scanned the area. There wasn't anybody up there. It feels like there was something attached to the mirror, but my husband will not get rid of this thing. I'm pretty sure that I don't just have sleep paralysis either. At this point, I'm unsure what to do. Story number 4, An Expected Surprise. My mother lived in a haunted house on Dunsmuir Road as a child from the early to mid-1960s. It's still standing. A previous owner had passed away in the house in the 1950s, dying of a heart attack in the living room. The same day, his wife died in the hospital. This info being according to the neighbors. My grandparents bought it from the man who purchased it after that incident. He had moved his wife and kids out to another property and was living alone in the house, which was stripped of furniture, save for a mattress and dresser in one of the bedrooms. After my family moved in, there were disembodied voices, a woman crying audible through the whole house. This was the first thing that happened. Fleeting shadows and shapes in the corner of the eye, furniture and objects moving. My aunt's leg grabbed in the middle of the night while in bed, and a neighbor's dog going berserk while staring at the front door. All of this was witnessed and experienced by my mom, aunt, grandparents, neighbors, and friends who visited the house. My grandmother was friends with a neighbor who attended the Hamilton Spiritualist Church on Ottawa Street. She went with her to a meeting there, and without any knowledge of her background, one of the mediums walked straight over to her and told her that she had a spirit in her house that was trapped and trying to make its presence known. I guess that might explain a lot of what's been going on there for some time. It wasn't really a surprise. Story number 5, Shuffling. I have a lot of ghost stories, things I've experienced, but this is my most recent one. Just so you're aware, I am a heavy sleeper. I woke up around 12:30 a.m. the other night, which is completely and utterly rare. Like maybe once every 2 years kind of thing. Since I'm up, I get some water from the bathroom and climb back into bed. As I'm grumbling about how long it might take me to fall back asleep, I hear a sound. It's the distant sound of my own slippers shuffling down the hall towards my bedroom door. I recognize that sound very well, and I know it wasn't the people on the floor above me or anyone else in the hall. I'm petrified. I was absolutely terrified beyond reason. I've seen enough horror movies that I didn't even turn to look at my open doorway. I just laid there, listening to that shuffling sound. Eventually, the sound stopped. I did lay awake for a long time after it stopped, but to my surprise, I fell asleep again. You might be thinking home intruder? No. In the morning, there was nothing amiss. I'm still unsure what the hell was in my house. Well, Rosebuds, that's it for our haunted house stories. Before I do the reveal, take a moment to give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. It really helps us grow a little faster. And also, leave us a comment down below. Tell us what you think is the cause of haunted houses. Do you think it's spirits, demons, bad energy vortexes, all of the above, or just leaky plumbing? Okay, on to the reveal. Today's fictional story was story number 3, about the woman who thinks that the old family mirror might be holding a curse. I usually share the inspiration I glean from how I write my fictional stories, but this time, no inspiration. Just a creative fictional story based on the fact that I've long held a superstition that mirrors can sometimes be cursed, blessed, or neutral. I hope you enjoyed my story all the same, as well as all the other true accounts. Anyway, that's a wrap, Rosebuds. Thanks for listening. Until next time, take care and stay creepy.